Anyway, the next scene we get is that one colorful scene. This is pretty memorable as well because we don't have a lot of scenes like this in TOS, but that colorful scene in the rec room where Spock is playing his electric lyre. Uhura starts singing, and Spock seemed kind of amused, maybe a little bit annoyed or a little bit kind of like, yeah, rolling his eyes, but he keeps on playing. Before long, Uhura has strung together a playful song that refers to Spock as a devil-like creature that will break women's hearts. Oh, girls in space, be wary, be wary, be wary. Oh, girls in space, be wary, i.e., be wary of Spock, who's going to break your heart. Then Charlie comes into the room, and Uhura takes the opportunity to start singing about him instead. And she describes Charlie as the special, mysterious traveler who comes along, quote, seeking his first embrace. He is saving it for you, which she says while she's looking at Rand, who Charlie is sitting with. And of course, Rand is very uncomfortable because she's had enough experience with Charlie to know that Charlie's not going to get the humor of that. And that really easy to misunderstand joke is not going to be good for Charlie's confused ears. So she just kind of subtly shakes her head at Uhura, who, on the fly, changes the song into one that's kind of opposite in tone, but is really humiliating for someone who didn't realize how young he was and didn't realize that that first verse was a joke with its aggrandizing admiration for this mysterious traveler. So we end up with Charlie's our new darling, our darling, our darling, Charlie's our new darling. Ugh, poor Charlie. You know what's funny? When the song about Spock had begun at the beginning of the scene, Spock just kind of smiled and he had this kind of shrugging look on his face. He just kept playing almost like he was rolling his eyes on the inside, but he just didn't care. He was having a good time. Very different attitude than what I might expect from, let's say, Tuvok on Voyager, who seems like he would have probably been a little more annoyed and frustrated and probably would have stopped playing and said, stop singing such illogical things. Certainly, if Neelix was involved, Tuvok would have definitely stopped and said, you're being illogical. But Spock in this scene at least has a much more congenial and pleasant attitude because of his indifference, I suppose. But in contrast to Spock's pleasant, unfazed attitude to being sung about, when the song about Charlie began, Charlie just looked really uncomfortable with all the attention. Probably not because he didn't like the sense of fun, like with Spock, but because he was really just perplexed about what to make of it. Because to the socially awkward ear, that first verse that sounded like Uhura was actually praising Charlie as a wonderful and impressive person. Charlie had no frame of reference to identify what in the heck it was, whether it was a joke or an actual heaping of praise, which is why Rand became so uncomfortable with the part about seeking his first embrace. He's saving it for you. Because she knew that Charlie didn't have the social skill to read the flighty sense of humor that would decode the whole thing. And that's also why afterwards, Charlie became so angry, because once Uhura flipped that tail, she basically alternated a song of admiration and praise into denigration. She went from making him sound like the grandest old catch ever, which kind of made sense in context because she had just finished saying that about Spock, that Spock was the grandest old catch ever. And she just put that onto Charlie. But then she took that and she flipped it into this picture of he's this 5-year old that all the girls are fawning over because he's so itty bitty and cute, and that's just going to feel absolutely humiliating. And Uhura didn't know she was being downright cruel, but she kind of was. Anyway, so in his anger, Charlie magically takes away Uhura's voice and she coughs and can't sing anymore. And then Charlie starts showing Rand some card tricks. Now, it's interesting how the moment he came in, so back when Uhura was still singing, he was already trying to show Rand something with the cards. He was like nudging her and like, hey, look at this, you know. And whether we see that as an element of social awkwardness in the sense of having underdeveloped conversation skills, which is definitely part of what it was, he doesn't know how to say hello and he doesn't know how to ascertain that it's not time for him to be receiving attention yet because of the way the room is going. Or whether we see it as a carryover from childhood.